How come the USA is so polarized between liberals and conservatives? Well, we've just read a wonderful new book, Fault Lines, by Kevin Kruse and Julian Zelizer. Now, these two historians present a narrative of what's happened since 1974, and I want to highlight a couple of points that really improve my understanding. So it's about corporate lobbying, backlash, faith, charismatic leaders, and also nationwide media networks. So from 1976, there was a removal of campaign spending that massively incentivized wealthy organizations and individuals to get involved politically. So we see the skyrocketing of corporate lobbying and also PACs, political action committees. But how do you actually get people mobilized around, removing environmental and employment restrictions if they're not big business? Well, this is where the moral majority comes in, and this is how it started. So, first, conservatives were deeply unsettled by the civil rights struggles, sexual liberation, and gay rights of the 1960s and 70s. And that backlash was amplified by, I think, three things. One, television and radio networks enabled speakers like Rush Limbaugh, for example, to whip up fears, to tell people that if they did nothing, if they stood idly by, then the country would become ungodly. Also, television shows a reality that is so different from people's conservative ideals. So it was, for example, some shows like Will and Grace, Sex and the City, Soap, and Ellen. Yes, those can be empowering and inspiring for people who are already sympathetic. But our interpretation of television or other information is mediated by our priors, our networks, our communities, and also charismatic leaders. So this is how people like Rush Limbaugh and the leaders of the moral majority like Jerry Falwell were able to whip up hysteria. They tapped into those cable television and radio networks, and they also got people mobilized at the pulpit. So America being a deeply religious society, the pastors and preachers went to the pulpit and they got people registered to vote. These for Baptists, for evangelicals who believe the rapture is coming, who believe that they need to reform themselves in order to acquire salvation, they were extremely receptive to these ideas. So for me, that's the big insight of Fault Lines. It's a story of business involvement as enabled by the absence of restrictions on corporate spending in political campaigns. Also, television networks enabling this nationwide infrastructure through which charismatic leaders can whip up hysteria, whip up concerns. And then those charismatic leaders, the power of oratory, getting people galvanized, getting them mobilized, making them believe that if they stand up, they can change America and make it into a Christian society. And then the power of faith, that people will be much more likely to act if they think they're on a God-given mission. That's the story of how America became so polarized. From Kevin Kruse and Julian Zelizer, Fault Lines is a great book. Thank you.